There are women who move through life carrying a quiet mystery around them. Not because they are cold, not because they are incapable of love, not because they reject others, but because something in their presence feels different. They are not surrounded by groups of female friends. They are not woven into large social circles. They are not constantly included in gatherings, group chats, or casual bonds. And yet, they are not broken. If you are one of these women, you have probably spent years wondering what is wrong with you, why other women seem to form friendships so easily, why connections appear to flow naturally for everyone else, why you can be open, kind, present, and still remain on the outside. What if I told you this solitude is not a flaw? What if your isolation is not punishment but indication? Carl Jung believed that certain souls are born carrying a different psychological structure, not superior, not inferior, different. These souls are wired for depth before they are wired for belonging. They are not designed to dissolve easily into collective identity. They are not meant to disappear inside social sameness. They are meant to individuate early. Individuation, in Jungian psychology, is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are beneath conditioning, expectations, and masks. Most people postpone this journey for decades. Some never begin it at all. But some women are initiated into it early, often through loneliness, often through not fitting in, often through a strange feeling, even as children, that they were observing the world rather than seamlessly participating in it. You may remember being young and sensing that you did not operate the same way other girls did. They bonded over trends. You wondered about meaning. They mirrored one another. You questioned. They learned quickly how to adapt. You felt uncomfortable pretending. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't rejection. It was instinct. Your psyche was already oriented toward authenticity, rather than belonging. Jung would say that when a soul begins individuation early, it often experiences social friction, because society is built on shared personas. Personas are the social masks we wear to be accepted. Most relationships, especially superficial ones, are built through persona interaction. But you are not primarily persona-driven. You are essence-driven. You feel people. You read energy. You sense what is unsaid. You perceive contradictions between what people show and what they are. And that alone changes everything. Because many people unconsciously rely on the agreement that we will not look too deeply at each other. We will complement masks. We will validate illusions. We will participate in mutual performance. You do not naturally participate in this contract, not because you choose to rebel, but because your nervous system does not know how to lie comfortably. You carry a frequency of truth, and truth is disorienting to those who have built their identity on adaptation. This is why, without intending to, you trigger others, not through words, not through actions, through presence. You reflect back what people avoid seeing within themselves, their suppressed desires, their buried grief, their abandoned creativity, their unspoken resentment, their unexpressed rage, their unlived life. Jung called this shadow. The shadow contains everything a person has disowned in themselves. When someone encounters a person who embodies what they have rejected, the psyche experiences threat, not conscious threat, existential threat. You become a walking reminder of who they might have been if they had chosen themselves. And the ego does not like reminders. So the psyche defends itself, not usually with open hostility, but with subtle distancing, with exclusion, with discomfort, with quiet invalidation, with small narrative shifts that place you as too intense, too strange, too sensitive, too different. These labels are not descriptions of you. They are protective spells cast by wounded egos. Your depth does not repel healthy people. It repels unintegrated people. There is a difference. Jung observed that individuals who walk toward their inner truth early often experience what feels like exile, not because they are cursed, but because they are ahead of the emotional development curve. They live in a psychological climate that others have not yet reached, and connection requires shared altitude. You cannot deeply bond with people who have not yet turned inward. You cannot form soul-level friendships with those who are still living exclusively in persona. It is not superiority. It is timing. Your solitude is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of specialization. Some souls are builders of depth, not collectors of acquaintances. Some women are designed to form few connections, but profoundly. Not many connections, shallowly. This often creates long seasons of apparent emptiness, because depth-aligned people are statistically rare. You may go years without meeting someone who truly recognizes you, not because you are unlovable, but because your nervous system does not resonate with surface-level intimacy. You are not here to gather friends. You are here to encounter mirrors. This distinction matters. Many women are taught that social abundance equals worth, but Jung would argue that psychic coherence matters far more than social volume. You were not built for crowd belonging. You were built for soul resonance, which means your path is quieter, slower, more solitary, but infinitely more meaningful. You are closer to your inner voice than most. You question your patterns, you examine your wounds, you feel your emotions fully. You cannot easily numb, you cannot easily distract. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is a high-resolution nervous system. You pick up subtleties others miss. You notice shifts. You sense undercurrents. You read between lines. This is why shallow interactions exhaust you. They feel like starvation. You crave realness the way others crave entertainment. That is not a defect. That is a calling. Historically, women like you were never mainstream. They were the mystics, the healers, the seers, the midwives of transformation, the ones who stood at the edge of villages. Not because they were unwanted, but because they lived between worlds. They did not belong fully to collective consciousness. They belonged to liminal space, the threshold between what is and what could be. You carry that lineage, not symbolically. Psychologically, your soul is oriented toward depth, not performance, toward truth, not approval, toward becoming, not blending. That orientation has a cost. Loneliness is part of the tuition. But loneliness is not the final destination. It is the corridor. Before you meet those who truly see you, you must learn to see yourself. Before you are mirrored externally, you must become internally anchored. This solitude is forging that anchor. You are learning who you are without applause, without validation, without reflection. That is rare power. Most people never discover themselves. They only discover who they need to be loved. You are discovering who you are. That is why your path feels harder, but also why it will eventually feel freer. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not defective. You are early. You are deep. You are wired for real. And real always feels lonely before it feels like home. There is a kind of woman who does not speak the language most people use to bond. She does not connect through ritualized small talk. She does not feel nourished by surface-level exchanges. She cannot comfortably participate in the unspoken social games where subtle hierarchies are negotiated, where value is measured through comparison, and where belonging is purchased by conformity. Not because she is arrogant, not because she is superior, but because her inner world is too vast to be flattened into performance, while many women are taught, often unconsciously, to strengthen friendships through shared distraction, gossip, consumption, or mutual image building. You are oriented toward something else. You are oriented toward meaning. You listen beneath words. You feel beneath behavior. You notice contradictions between what people say and what they live. And this alone separates you, because most social bonding is built on unconscious agreements to not look too deeply, agreements to not ask the uncomfortable questions, agreements to not disturb the emotional ecosystem, agreements to keep everything light enough to remain controllable. You do not naturally honor these agreements. You are not wired for them. You are wired for depth. You are wired for truth. You are wired for presence. Carl Jung described this as an early movement toward individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are beneath conditioning, family expectations, cultural programming, and collective identity. Most people delay this process until midlife. Some never begin it, but a small number of souls begin early, not by choice, by inner compulsion. Something inside you has always been pushing you toward yourself, toward your own psyche, toward your own shadow, toward your own questions, even when you didn't have language for it, even when you didn't understand why you felt different, even when you wished you could just be normal. This early individuation changes how you move through social environments. You are not primarily persona-driven. You are essence-driven. Persona is the mask we wear to be accepted. Essence is who we are when no one is watching. Most people relate through persona. You relate through essence. This means you unconsciously bypass the layers where most social bonding occurs. You go straight to the core. And that makes people uneasy, because you are not only seeing them, you are also reminding them of what they have not seen in themselves. Jung called this projection. Every person carries a shadow, the rejected, suppressed, denied aspects of their psyche, unlived desires, unexpressed emotions, abandoned dreams, silenced anger, buried grief, untapped power. When someone encounters a person who naturally embodies qualities they have disowned, their psyche reacts. Not consciously, defensively. You become a carrier of their unlived life. Your authenticity highlights their self-betrayal. Your depth highlights their avoidance. Your presence highlights their fragmentation. Not because you intend to, but because your nervous system is not structured to hide. You live closer to your truth than most people are ready to face. And instead of consciously recognizing this, many people unconsciously push you away. Rarely through open hostility. More often through subtle behaviors. You are left out. Your words are twisted. Your intentions are questioned. Energy shifts when you enter a room. Conversations change tone. Smiles become thinner. And if you sense it and speak about it, you are told, you're too sensitive. You're imagining things. You're overthinking. But you are not imagining it. Your body knows. Your nervous system knows. Your soul knows. These micro-rejections are not about your worth. They are about threat perception. A woman who does not require group validation to exist destabilizes the unconscious power structure of the collective. Because many people have traded their authenticity for belonging. They have sacrificed parts of themselves in exchange for acceptance. They sense, without consciously realizing, that you did not make that same trade. You kept your soul. And this triggers what Jung called the narcissistic wound of the collective. Not narcissism as vanity, but narcissism as fragile identity. Identity built on external reflection. You remind them that identity can be internal, that selfhood can be self-generated, that wholeness does not require permission. This is deeply unsettling to those who survive through adaptation. Historically, women like you were never central figures in mainstream society. They lived at the edges, not because they were weak, but because they carried inconvenient truth. They were the healers, the seers, the herbalists, the midwives, the mystics, the ones who saw beneath appearances, the ones who understood cycles, the ones who listened to dreams, the ones who knew how to sit with darkness without running. Society often labeled these women dangerous, not because they were evil, but because they were uncontrollable. A woman who answers to her inner authority cannot be easily dominated. She cannot be easily manipulated. She cannot be easily molded. So she was called strange, witch, outcast, unnatural. But beneath those labels was always the same fear. She sees too much. She knows too much. She belongs to herself. And that lineage still exists inside you. Not symbolically, psychologically. You do not bond easily with women who have not yet turned inward. You do not resonate with those who avoid their inner world. You do not feel safe in spaces built on performance. This does not mean you are meant to be alone forever. It means you are meant to connect differently. Your friendships will be fewer, but they will be real. They will be built on mutual self-awareness, on emotional honesty, on psychological depth, on shared willingness to grow. You are not designed for social abundance. You are designed for soul resonance. You are not here to collect people. You are here to recognize mirrors. And mirrors are rare. So if you have spent long seasons without female friends, if you have wondered what is wrong with you, if you have tried to adjust yourself and still felt out of place, hear this. Nothing is wrong with you. You are not defective. You are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are early. You are deep. You are built for truth. And truth always walks alone before it finds its tribe. Your solitude is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of initiation. You are becoming yourself. And that path is narrow, but it leads somewhere real. There is a reason your existence feels threatening to the collective pattern. Not because you are loud, not because you demand attention, not because you seek dominance, but because you hold a lived truth, a truth that exposes how fragile the collective agreement actually is. Most social systems are built on adaptation, on quiet self-abandonment, on shrinking certain parts of the self to remain acceptable, on trading authenticity for inclusion. When a woman refuses to lower her frequency, she disrupts this unspoken contract, not intentionally. Simply by being, you are not participating in the silent bargain that says, I will become smaller so you feel safer, and that alone carries a cost. You pay for your wholeness with isolation. You pay for your integrity with distance. You pay for your depth with misunderstanding. But what you gain is something most people never touch. You keep yourself. Your nervous system remains aligned. Your soul remains intact. Your inner voice does not get drowned out by constant external validation. And this is not accidental. This is vocational. Jung described individuation as the process by which a person becomes who they truly are. Not who they were conditioned to be, not who their family wanted them to be, not who society rewards, but who the psyche has been quietly shaping from within. Individuation almost always requires distance from the collective, not permanently, but for long enough that the soul can hear itself. Women who walk this path rarely find large groups of female friends who resonate with them. Not because they are broken, but because they are operating on a different layer of reality. They ask different questions. They hold different values. They move at a different pace. They orient toward meaning rather than image, toward truth rather than consensus, toward depth rather than comfort. Most women are not wrong for living in the collective layer. It serves a purpose, but it is not where you live, and forcing yourself to pretend it is will slowly destroy you. Here is an important distinction. There is empty loneliness, and there is sacred solitude. Empty loneliness comes from unmet attachment wounds, from desperate longing, from believing you are unworthy of connection. Sacred solitude is different. Sacred solitude is chosen by the soul. It arises when something inside you knows that superficial belonging would be more painful than temporary aloneness. It arises when your psyche is preparing for a deeper form of connection that cannot exist on shallow soil. You may have moved through both. Most people who walk this path do. But at a certain point, something shifts. The loneliness stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like incubation, like a quiet chamber where something inside you is forming. Your solitude is not evidence that you are unwanted. It is evidence that your psyche is refining you. You are being shaped for relationships that require consciousness, not numbers, not crowds, not constant availability, but resonance. You are not meant to be surrounded by many. You are meant to be met by a few who can actually see you. This path demands something difficult. You must become your own feminine sanctuary. If the external feminine mirrored you poorly, if mother figures were unavailable, cold, competitive, or inconsistent, if sisterhood felt unsafe, absent, or fragile, then the psyche compensates. It turns inward. Jung spoke of the great mother archetype, the inner source of nurturing, containment, protection, and unconditional holding. When it is not reliably available outside, it must be cultivated inside. You learn to mother yourself. You learn to witness your own emotions. You learn to soothe your own nervous system. You learn to sit with your pain without abandoning yourself. You become your own home. This is not something most people ever master. They outsource self-soothing to relationships. They seek regulation through others. You were forced to build it internally, not because life was cruel, but because your soul needed structural strength. You are learning how to hold depth, and only those who can hold depth can eventually meet depth. Your path is not about being chosen by many. It is about being recognizable to the right ones. There will come a time when you encounter women who feel strangely familiar, not in personality, not in style, but in nervous system, in values, in capacity for introspection, in willingness to tell the truth. These connections will not be loud. They will not be performative. They will feel calm, grounded, mutual, safe. You will not have to prove yourself. You will not have to shrink. You will not have to translate your inner world. You will not have to apologize for your depth. Until then, your task is not to force belonging. Your task is to remain loyal to your inner truth, to stop interpreting your difference as defect, to stop negotiating with yourself for acceptance, to stop trying to make shallow rooms feel like home. You are not failing at friendship. You are on a path that requires consciousness before connection. That is rarer. That is harder. That is slower, but it is real. Your solitude is not a sentence. It is an initiation. You are becoming the woman who can recognize true sisterhood when it appears, because you first learned how to recognize yourself. Your healing is not an event. It is not a switch you flip. It is not a decision you make one morning and suddenly decades of wounds dissolve. It is a slow, organic unfolding, a relationship that grows between you and yourself. And like any real relationship, it requires patience, repetition, and honesty. You cannot command yourself into self-love, but you can begin to change how you speak to yourself. You can begin to notice the voice inside your mind that is constantly evaluating you. The voice that says, "They don't like you. You're too strange. You're not enough. You're not normal. You don't belong." That voice did not originate inside you. It is an echo, an accumulation of external judgments that were absorbed before you were old enough to filter them. In Jungian terms, this becomes a complex, a charged emotional pattern that activates automatically when certain situations appear, especially social situations involving other women. The moment you step toward a group, the complex lights up. Your body tightens. Your thoughts accelerate. Your expectation of rejection becomes so strong that it shapes your behavior. You may withdraw. You may overthink. You may become hyper-aware. And sometimes, the very energy of anticipation creates the distance you fear. Not because you are broken, not because you deserve it, but because an old wound is driving the nervous system. Here is where power returns. The moment you recognize the complex, it begins to loosen. When you can say, "This is a pattern. This is a wound. This is not my identity." You separate who you are from what happened to you. You stop personalizing a psychological imprint. You stop calling a trauma response a personality flaw. You realize you do not attract rejection because you are defective. You attract familiar dynamics because your psyche learned them early, and anything that is learned can be unlearned. Working with the inner feminine means more than soothing pain. It means integrating the full spectrum of feminine, archetypes that live inside you. Most women were taught they are allowed to embody only a narrow slice of womanhood. Soft, but not strong. Strong, but not sensitive. Independent, but not tender. Nurturing, but not powerful. But the feminine psyche is vast. Inside you lives the maiden, curious, open, sensitive, alive. The mother, nurturing, protective, grounding. The warrior, boundaried, fierce, uncompromising in truth. The lover, sensual, creative, expressive. The crone, wise, unafraid of shadow. Wholeness does not come from choosing one. It comes from allowing all of them to exist. You are allowed to be gentle and strong. You are allowed to be vulnerable and sovereign. You are allowed to need rest and demand respect. You are allowed to want connection and cherish solitude. Integration is not about becoming someone else. It is about reclaiming who you already are. On a practical level, this means learning to treat yourself the way you once hoped others would. It means becoming the voice you never had. Imagine speaking to the younger version of yourself, the girl who stood on the edges, the girl who watched others connect and wondered what was wrong with her, the girl who internalized silence. Would you tell her, "Try harder, be different, be less"? Or would you kneel in front of her, hold her face, look into her eyes, and say, There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not defective. You are rare. You are sensitive because you are perceptive. You are alone because you are deep. You are misunderstood because you are ahead of your time. This is not imaginary therapy. This is nervous system repair. This is reparenting. This is how internal safety is built. Each time you interrupt self-attack and replace it with compassion, you carve a new neural pathway. Each time you choose gentleness over self-punishment, you teach your psyche a new rule. I am safe with myself. And when you become safe, inside everything changes. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Your body softens. Your eyes carry less defense. Your energy becomes less guarded. You stop scanning for rejection. You stop bracing. You stop performing. And something subtle occurs. You become more readable, more grounded, more real. People who operate at your depth begin to notice you, not in large numbers, not loudly, but clearly. You will not suddenly be surrounded by dozens of women. That is not your path. Your path is fewer, deeper, truer connections. Women who have also walked through fire. Women who have sat alone. Women who have questioned everything. Women who have learned to live without masks. These connections cannot be forced. They emerge when your inner world becomes stable enough to recognize resonance. Until then, your task is simple but not easy. Be loyal to yourself. Speak kindly to yourself. Stop calling your difference a defect. Stop abandoning yourself when others don't understand you. Stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never designed for your frequency. You are not behind. You are not cursed. You are not unlovable. You are undergoing a slow, profound initiation into wholeness, and wholeness always begins in solitude. When a woman becomes her own loving mother, something ancient inside her begins to mend. Not in a dramatic way, not in a sudden explosion of enlightenment, but quietly, gently, cell by cell. You start to become the one who soothes yourself, the one who validates yourself, the one who listens when no one else does. In Jungian psychology, there is the concept of the anima and the animus, inner soul aspects that shape how we relate to ourselves and the world. For a woman, the animus often represents inner structure, direction, discernment, and will. But equally vital is the conscious integration of the many feminine faces within her own psyche. A woman must learn to become her own mother, her own sister, her own friend. This does not mean you will never want external relationships. It means you no longer need them in order to survive. It means connection becomes a choice, not a lifeline. It means you build an inner home, and from that home, you step into the world without desperation, without bargaining, without shrinking. Something extraordinary happens when this integration begins. The more you learn to hold yourself with tenderness and strength, the less urgently you seek approval. The hunger for validation softens. The compulsion to prove your worth fades. You stop performing versions of yourself that were designed to be digestible. You stop negotiating your authenticity. You begin to rest in your own sovereignty. This is not a comfortable process. It is an alchemical one. Jung often used alchemy as a metaphor for psychological transformation, not the turning of literal lead into gold, but the transmutation of the soul. That is what is happening inside you. Your loneliness, your rejection, your grief, your rage, your longing, all of it enters the fire. Nothing is bypassed. Nothing is spiritually bypassed or rushed. Everything is felt. Everything is honored. And slowly, what once felt like poison becomes medicine. You do not emerge as a woman adored by everyone. You emerge as a woman who no longer abandons herself, and that is infinitely more powerful. You become someone who belongs to herself, someone who lives inside her own center, someone who is at home in her own skin, whether the room is full or empty, whether eyes are on you or turned away. You are no longer scanning the environment for permission to exist. The energy you once spent trying to belong is reclaimed, and it begins flowing elsewhere, into your creativity, into your spiritual life, into your curiosity, into your growth, into the things that feel alive to you. You stop trying to be enough for people who were never capable of truly seeing you. You stop auditioning for spaces that were never designed for your depth. This is where the narrative changes. Your story is not about being unwanted. It is about being uncommon. It is not about being defective. It is about being built for a different altitude. When you anchor into yourself this way, something subtle shifts in your field. You become calmer, more grounded, more embodied. Your presence stops asking, it starts being. And paradoxically, this is when the right connections begin to find you. Not crowds, not constant social noise, but a few real ones. Slow ones, honest ones. People who feel strangely familiar. People who don't require you to explain your depth. People who don't flinch at your silence. People who don't need you to perform. These connections do not arrive because you chased them. They arrive because you became resonant with them. Because you stopped abandoning yourself. Because you stopped broadcasting need. Because you started broadcasting truth. You were never meant to fit into the collective feminine script. You were meant to write a different one. One rooted in inner authority. One rooted in depth. One rooted in self-trust. Your path is not the path of the many. It is the path of the initiated. And initiation always begins with solitude. Not as punishment, but as preparation. You are not behind. You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are becoming. We begin to see something essential. Jung understood that true wholeness is born through the integration of inner polarities, the masculine and the feminine within us, structure and surrender, strength and softness, direction and receptivity. For a woman, this means cultivating her own inner authority, her capacity to stand on her own feet, her ability to protect herself, to choose herself, to generate stability from within, and at the same time, honoring her capacity to nurture, to feel, to comfort, to love, to soften. When these two currents begin to flow together inside you, something profound shifts. Everything changes. Loneliness loses its sharp, punishing edge. It no longer feels like a sentence. It becomes a spaciousness, a sanctuary, a field of freedom, a place where you finally get to exist without negotiating your essence, without translating yourself, without shrinking your depth into something palatable. You begin to experience solitude not as exile but as sovereignty. Not all women are meant to live surrounded by constant social noise. Some are born with souls that turn inward, not out of fear, not out of deficiency, but out of design. This is not a statement about superiority. It is a statement about function. Across cultures and epochs, there have always been women who lived at the edge of the village. The seers, the healers, the midwives, the herbalists, the dreamwalkers, the women who spoke with plants, who sang old songs, who sat with the dying, who guided births. They belonged to the people, but not to the crowd. They were essential, yet separate, feared and respected at the same time. Their power did not come from fitting in. It came from going inward, from entering the depths others were too afraid to touch. You may be carrying the echo of this archetype, not as a fantasy, not as a romantic identity, but as a psychic memory, a sense that your difference is not accidental, that your soul remembers a time when being set apart had meaning, had purpose. In the modern world, conformity is rewarded. Sameness is encouraged. Deviation is subtly punished. There is little obvious space for the solitary woman, and yet, she is needed now more than ever, because those who stand outside the collective trance can see what those inside it cannot. You notice patterns others overlook. You sense contradictions others normalize. You ask questions that unsettle comfortable illusions. You feel undercurrents others drown out with noise. Your solitude forced you to develop inner resources most people never had to cultivate: emotional self-reliance, introspective capacity, psychological endurance, spiritual sensitivity. Jung would say that individuals like you serve the collective unconscious, not by blending in, but by carrying what the collective cannot yet hold. Someone has to carry the disowned truth. Someone has to metabolize the shadow. Someone has to feel what is being avoided. Often that someone becomes the outsider, not by choice but by calling. This means your path will not resemble the path of most women. It will not move in straight lines. It will not follow cultural timelines. It will not be easily explainable. And that is not a flaw. It is a feature. The deep paradox is this: the more you stop framing your solitude as a defect, the more you stop treating it as evidence that something is wrong with you, the less painful it becomes. The less you fight it, the less you resist it, the less it tightens. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates spaciousness. When you stop demanding that your life look like everyone else's, your nervous system relaxes. Your psyche exhales. You stop waging war with your nature. You begin cooperating with it. And something remarkable happens. The loneliness transforms. It doesn't necessarily disappear, but it changes quality. It becomes quieter, softer, more like a wide open field than a locked room. You start to sense that your solitude is not empty. It is fertile. It is gestating something. Not necessarily a person, not necessarily a relationship, but a deeper relationship with yourself, with your own rhythms, with your own truth, with your own soul. You are not here to become a more socially acceptable version of yourself. You are here to become a more honest one. You are not here to force yourself into circles that drain you. You are here to build a life that can hold your depth. And when you live this way, something subtle unfolds. You stop chasing belonging. You start emanating being. And from that state, the right connections, few but real, emerge naturally. Not because you hunted them, not because you contorted yourself, but because resonance always finds resonance. You were never meant for the many. You were meant for the true. The more you stop fighting your nature, the less painful your life becomes. Not because the longing disappears, not because the desire for connection suddenly dies, not because the human need to be seen evaporates, but because the war inside you ends. There is a profound difference between pain and resistance. Pain is human. Resistance is optional. When you stop arguing with the shape of your soul, something inside you loosens. It feels like a knot slowly untying. The tension between who you think you should be and who you actually are begins to dissolve. You no longer wake up asking, "What is wrong with me?" You begin to ask, "What is right about me that I have been trying to erase?" Do not misunderstand this. This is not romanticizing suffering. This is not glorifying isolation. This is not pretending that the longing for companionship is imaginary. Your desire for closeness is real. Your wish to be understood is real. Your hope for a deep, loving friendship or relationship is real. You are not broken for wanting connection. But there is a crucial shift that must happen. Instead of sending this longing outward, toward people who cannot meet you, toward spaces that cannot hold you, toward dynamics that repeat the same wound, you begin to turn that longing inward. You begin to ask, how can I become the kind of presence I am searching for? How can I offer myself the safety I keep hoping someone else will give me? How can I learn to sit with my own depth without running from it? This is where real transformation starts. Not with forcing yourself to become more likable, not with trying harder to fit in, not with polishing your personality, but with building an internal relationship that is steady. When you stop begging the world to validate your existence, a strange paradox unfolds. You become quieter, not muted, not smaller, quieter in the sense that you are no longer broadcasting desperation, and that quiet carries power. It is the kind of power that does not chase. It is the kind of power that does not perform. It is the kind of power that simply exists. From this state, you do not become magnetic to everyone. You become magnetic to the right ones, not to crowds, not to surface-level bonds, not to people who only know how to skim. You become visible to souls who recognize depth because they carry it too. They will not find you because you advertised yourself. They will find you because resonance does not need marketing. Until that happens, and for some, even after, you are asked to become your own most loyal companion, not in a forced motivational way, but in a slow, honest, intimate way, learning how to sit with yourself without distraction, learning how to listen to your thoughts without immediately believing them, learning how to soothe yourself when old grief rises, learning how to celebrate your own small victories. This is the real journey, from the wound of rejection to sacred solitude. from desperate searching to quiet inner fullness, from the woman who felt she belonged nowhere to the woman who belongs to herself. Jung understood that individuation is not a pleasant path. It does not feel like a spa day for the psyche. It feels like confrontation. It feels like meeting parts of yourself you avoided. It feels like grieving the life you thought you were supposed to have. It feels like mourning fantasies. It feels like standing naked before your own truth. But on the other side of this process is something most people never experience: the sensation of being internally whole. Not perfect, not invincible, whole. You stop needing to prove that you are lovable. You stop auditioning for acceptance. You stop twisting yourself into shapes that hurt. You stop explaining your existence. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop trying to be digestible. You simply are. And in that being, a rare kind of sovereignty is born. The kind that does not require an audience. The kind that does not depend on applause. The kind that exists even when no one is watching. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of becoming an individual, not becoming special, not becoming superior, but becoming aligned with your own center, able to stand inside yourself without collapsing, able to walk alone without feeling erased, able to love without abandoning yourself. Here is the hidden gift inside your story. A woman who can remain authentic without external validation is a woman who cannot be owned, cannot be easily manipulated, cannot be easily reduced. Your capacity to exist truthfully, even without a female circle, even without constant social reinforcement, is a form of quiet courage most people never develop. You become a living signal to other women like you. You show them that survival is possible, that depth is survivable, that solitude does not equal death, that a woman can walk her own path and still remain soft, still remain loving, still remain human. Your loneliness is not random. It is not meaningless. It is not a cosmic mistake. It is a silent testament to a soul that refuses to betray itself. And yes, the price can feel heavy, but the alternative, losing yourself to belong, costs far more. There comes a moment on this path where you realize something quietly radical. You no longer need witnesses in order to exist. You no longer need an audience to validate your worth. You no longer need a circle to prove that you belong. You exist because you exist. You are real because you are real. You are worthy because you are alive. This realization does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives softly, almost unnoticed. One day you look at yourself and realize, I am still here. After all the years of feeling unseen, after all the moments of standing on the edges, after all the times you wondered what was wrong with you, you are still here, breathing, thinking, feeling, becoming. And that alone is extraordinary. Maybe you will eventually meet one or two women who truly understand you. Not many, not crowds, not a constant stream, but a few. And if that happens, it will feel natural, unforced, quiet, like recognition rather than excitement. But even if that never happens in the way you once imagined, there is something even more important that awaits you. You meet yourself, fully. Not the version that performs, not the version that tries, not the version that shrinks, but the version that exists without negotiation. And that is worth more than 1,000 shallow connections. Sacred solitude is not something you usually choose at the beginning. At first it feels imposed. It feels like rejection. It feels like loss. But at some point it becomes a conscious acceptance. You stop calling it a punishment. You stop calling it a flaw. You begin to recognize it as space. Space to breathe. Space to feel. Space to grow. Space to unfold into who you actually are. You begin to understand. This emptiness was never empty. It was a womb. A quiet container in which your soul was forming. If you continue walking this path honestly, you will eventually realize something surprising. You were never truly alone. You were accompanied the entire time by your own awareness, by your own consciousness, by what Jung called the self, the deeper organizing intelligence of the psyche, the part of you that knows how to move through darkness even when your mind is confused, the part of you that keeps guiding you, even when you feel lost. You did not arrive at a place where everything is easy. You did not arrive at a place where life suddenly becomes perfect. You arrived at a place where you can finally be yourself. And that is the only arrival that actually matters. Not becoming popular. Not becoming admired. Not becoming chosen. Becoming real. If these words resonate with you, if you recognize yourself in the story of the woman who walks alone, know that you are not an anomaly. You are not a mistake. You are part of a much larger pattern. A quiet lineage of women who were never meant to live shallow lives. Women who feel too much, think too deeply, see too clearly, carry too much awareness to comfortably fit into small boxes. This space exists for you. A space where depth is normal, where sensitivity is strength, where solitude is honored, where becoming yourself is valued more than performing for others. If you feel called, stay close. To this work, we will continue speaking about the hidden truths of the feminine soul, about wounds and gifts, about shadows and light, about what it actually means to become whole. And if you feel safe to share, write in the comments about your own experience with feminine solitude. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You are not alone in this, even if your path is solitary. I see the solitary ones, and you are one of them.